Welcome.
Hello, my sweetheart. How are you? I'm just putting the volume up. Sorry, I realised it's a little bit. There we go. How are you?
I'm good, actually. I'm feeling pretty good today. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good. Same as you. I woke up. I mean, it makes such a difference when the sun's out as well. And I made a point of getting out of the house this morning, and it does make such a difference when you just look after yourself a little bit, doesn't it? Like,
Totally. Yeah, I've never been so motivated to exercise. I normally can't bring myself to exercise at home or go for a run. But for some reason I found this, like, it's probably just needing to get out, needing to move or something.
Absolutely. No, so I'm very well, thank you. I am good. I'm really excited to be talking to you too. So thank you so much.
Amazing. Can you just explain to people a bit about what you do and how you help people?
Yeah, sure. So I'm obviously Natalie from Power Thoughts. So I work specifically with children and with parents, helping children to tap into the power of their own thought, to help them recognize that they don't have to believe everything that they think or respond to everything that they feel, and ultimately giving them some tools to help them manage their mindset and understand their feelings, to really help them to deal with some of the worries or the wobbles, those self-doubts that get in the way. And as I tell children, kind of take some tools to put you back in power instead of letting those big feelings sometimes take control over us, and take our power away. It's about us taking some of that power back through a lot of tools and things that we use. So yeah, that's kind of in a nutshell.
Amazing. Sounds amazing. And yeah, so I really appreciate your work, because I suppose I help adults with anxiety. You actually help children and parents and know so much about this. What sort of things are you noticing right now in terms of the struggles that this crisis has created? What sort of things are people struggling with?
Yeah, I think, well, quite a bit. I think obviously the uncertainty, and I'm sure that you've obviously noticed this as well. We don't, our brain doesn't like uncertainty. So the not knowing and all of those, like, all of the uncertainty we're facing with, and with parents as well, it's the obviously now having to work, a lot of us obviously working from home, and children being at home, so juggling how to work from home versus also educating our children. Initially I also saw quite a flurry of parents in a bit of a panic, telling me, how do I educate my child? I've now got to step into this teacher role and my child's showing me long division and I don't know how to do this. So the anxiety around that, and then also worrying that, what if my child falls behind, or they aren't able to access the learning the way that, they would at school, and I can't help them. And then the other side as well, children feeling worried and anxious. And I would say, I think as we've eased into, I think this is our third week of lockdown with children being off at home, I think it's kind of subsiding. But initially, children worrying about what's going on, putting on the news, worrying about family members dying or getting ill, are the other things that I see as well. So yeah, quite a lot, I think, definitely.
Yeah, it's suddenly a lot of change, isn't it? And it's new territory. No one's ever been in this situation before. People have had their worlds kind of completely changed.
Absolutely. And I think, and that's the thing, the not knowing what's going to come next and how long this is going for. I think if we knew, that we had a set date of things are going to return back to normal at this date, it would give us that sense of being in control and preparation. But we just don't know. And I think that's also heightened all of the stresses and the anxieties. And I also think being with your family 24/7. Whereas initially a mum was telling me the other day, she's like, I would go to work and I would, walk through Hyde Park for my work meetings, and now I have none of my time because I'm mum. So me as my own individual, that's not really, that time isn't there either. So I think having to kind of navigate all of that as well is quite a lot on at the moment.
Because I guess there's different people's experiences. If you don't have kids, your experience is going to be very different to people who have kids, working, parenting, that sort of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And then also I think, when working as well, navigating that as well. So the work day is going to look very different as well. And I think I think you had somebody on your podcast, was it Tony from the self-help?
Oh yeah.
Yes, and I think there you were chatting about working from home, and I think even that as a new thing as well brings a lot of stresses and anxiety in if you're not used to working from home, whether you've got children or not, you know, have children at home, it's still a new territory to navigate.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
What would you say to parents specifically then? Do you have any specific advice if they're feeling overwhelmed or anxious about this time and how to deal with and juggle all these different things that are going on?
Yeah, I think my first thought still is lower the expectations. And I think, you know, we've had so much going on. And I mean, you're very aware of this as well. Like, you know, when we're stressed out and the stress response, and we're in that space of feeling really overwhelmed with all the information, is just allow yourself a little bit of breathing space. And I think, you know, finding a rhythm that works for you and your family, and not getting too caught up in comparing, you know, your structure to what, say, somebody else's structure might look like, because I saw quite, you know, a lot of timetables and structures and routines being shared about on social media, which is absolutely brilliant, and I'm all for routines and structure, but I think let's not put too much pressure on ourselves and think it has to look this way, it has to start at 8:30, or, you know, that's maths, and then whatever it might be. So I think really lean into what feels good for you and your family and for your children as well. And I think in terms of touching on the thing where, you know, parents felt overwhelmed with the amount of work coming in and struggling, what do I teach my child, and I've got to do work as well, is if your child's not engaging with the learning, that there are many other opportunities for valuable learning that could be a more of a focused activity. So I was even suggesting, you know, watching a David Attenborough documentary and then children write a report on that, or, you know, do some research on that. It doesn't have to be the formal worksheets and structures, you know, that get sent through if we can't manage that. I think it's really important to, first of all, look after our emotional well-being, and for us to feel safe, and, you know, maybe explore with your families what are those nourishing activities that you can do that's going to make you feel safe, that's going to make you feel grounded, and really trying to keep things as simple as possible. So that mantra of less is more, keep it simple, to just take away all of that extra pressure that we can easily place on ourselves. A few tips, you know, that I can suggest.
Yeah, that's such good advice to take the pressure off, because I mean, I'm not a parent, but I can only imagine how chaotic it must be if you're trying to do your full-time job, look after kids, make healthy lunches, all these things, but simplicity, taking the pressure off.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think as well, you know, if you've got older children, because some parents were saying, how do I teach my 5-year-old and my 8-year-old and my 13-year-old? And bottom line is, you're not going to. So let's just take that off the table. Like, don't try to differentiate. But could it be that you maybe spend a pocket of time, and it doesn't have to even be every day, could you spend a pocket of time, you know, whether that is just 20 minutes engaging on an activity with a 5-year-old, and then it could be something that you do the 8-year-old, and perhaps even getting the older children to support the younger children is a really good way to take that pressure off yourself, but not expecting yourself to step into that teacher role, because unless you are a teacher, you're not the teacher, so that's okay. And I think even try and delegate to the other family members as much as you can. And I think if a single parent as well, again, is what activities engage your child. And if they're happy building mud cakes instead of doing their worksheets, and you're able to get some work done, that's fine, because there is still valuable learning taking place in that. And I think it comes back to that: take the pressure off, go with what works for your family, and also celebrate the small wins, because I think it can be really easy to kind of start shoulding all over ourselves again and thinking, I should do this. And I know that I do. I mean, I still do, you know, I'm always like having to practice what I preach and really catch myself, but just recognizing that we are in a very, you know, uncertain time, like not uncertain times, but this is all new. And I think it's really just important that we look after the emotional well-being and feeling good. And yeah, lowering all of that pressure and those expectations. Sorry, I feel like I've just rambled there.
No, that's so helpful. That's so helpful. And I think, yeah, so good to get these tips and advice, I think. What about in terms of if parents are trying to work at home as well? Is that even a possibility? Are people doing that? How's that working?
I think it is. It definitely is, but it might look very different. So again, don't think it's going to look like the 9 to 5 that you might, or 9 to whatever that you would normally have. It might be in different chunks. So I was talking to a dad this morning that said, him and his wife rotate. So this morning until 1 o'clock he's on calls, and then from 1 till 5 he's looking after the children and she's busy doing what she needs to do. If you are a single parent, I'd say perhaps, factor in 1 or 2 little activities that you do with your child, paying attention to them. But then it is that case, what can they do independently? And I also think, and I might be stepping on some toes here, but I think if it involves some screen time, but maybe it's educational screen time. I was looking online the other day, some really good TED Talks for children, like I said, documentaries. And that allows you to do what you need to do, and then do that. And also, if your children are up for it, because kids love a game, so we could role play, and this might work in short bursts, but we could have a desk set up, and this works really well for some families I've spoken to, where they have a workstation for their child set up next to theirs, and it's like, well, now we're in learning time, little Susie's learning and mummy's learning, but actually mummy's sending emails, and that can work for, say, portions of time as well. But I think recognizing that it might be in shorter bursts versus the longer stretches that we would naturally be used to, is something that, and take advantage of naps. Naps are a great time to get your work done, and also to replenish yourself as well. I think that's also important, that you yourself take some time out to just kind of restore your own energy.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you for that. I hope parents are managing to find a new normal in a sense, and find a routine, and just stick them in front of a documentary. I like the sound of that. And also a bit of distraction.
Yeah, absolutely. No, and I think, like I've said, above all else, some days are going to feel easier and feel good, and other days might be completely different, but that is okay. That is absolutely okay, and not to give yourself a hard time if it didn't go according to plan. I think that's the main thing, is just recognizing again that we want to feel as happy as we can possibly be in these circumstances, and just kind of alleviate the rest of the stress that we could put upon ourselves.
Definitely. I wanted to ask you about, what if kids are feeling anxious about this situation, and whether that's that they picked up from parents, because I guess kids can pick that up, or they've heard stuff on the news or from other friends. What would you say to people who are noticing that?
Yeah, so I'd say, first of all, if your children are feeling anxious, I'd say go with a conversation. First of all, when we're talking about the coronavirus, go with the conversation, but try and be guided by them rather than us giving too much information, because obviously developmentally appropriate, if your little 5-year-old says something, go with what they give you and answer their questions versus giving them all the information, should I say, if that's the right way to say it. Children are going to perhaps be, I know some clients that I've been working with are worried about death and about dying, naturally so. And last week when I was working with a little boy, he was really worried because whenever he puts on the news, it's like the numbers just keep rising and rising. So speak to them about, be quite frank, be factual, take the emotion out of it, but also, I think also let's shift the focus again, because of supporting all the people that are recovering from the situation, all of the people that are getting better, that we Are you there?
Yes, so it seemed to disconnect for a second there. I don't know
It
what
did.
happened, but the last thing I heard you talking about was you just started to talk about anxious kids and talking about it in their, using their language and answering their questions.
Yeah. And the second point was also we're getting explaining to children around the the purpose of the news. It is there to inform us, but it's going to shine, it's almost like shining a spotlight on just what's happening with the coronavirus. It's not shining a spotlight on all of the people who are recovering, on all of the people who are healthy, not taking away the importance of what is happening, but that's not the only thing that's happening in this world. And actually, could we shift the focus and look for the helpers? Can we explore or do some research on specific people who are helping? Or maybe let's shift the focus, who are the helpers in my community? Is something else. And if children are worried as well, I was speaking a lot about this the other day, coming back to that zone of control. What is within my control? What can I do? I can't do anything about where this is taking place and the countries and all of those things, but what can I do? I can wash my hands. I can FaceTime my grandparents every night, and check in on them. I could, offer to, with my mum, to do shopping for somebody next door. And again, taking that focus back on what I can do versus what's not within my control are some of the things that we can look at to help alleviate it. And I think also just acknowledge their feelings and understand, let's not disregard it, but I understand this feels scary and I know this feels worrying, and it's okay to feel worried, but let's then shift that focus to what is within our control.
That's just such good advice for all of us, no matter what age we are. I think we need to be remembering that the news is only ever reporting the worst things. There's a bigger picture here. We're right in the middle of it, but this is going to end this situation. Things are going to get better. And I mean, would you say for parents to not have the news on at home, or to kind of shield them from that sort of thing?
I would say, I think monitor it. I think even for ourselves, I'm sure that you can relate to this for your own mental health, how much news we watch. Because I know even the last couple of weeks, I found myself just watching a lot of news, and I was like, what am I doing? And it becomes addictive because you want to keep seeing it. But I think it's also important, let's monitor it. And I think I would say shield. I mean, you've got your CBBS or CBB News Round, your kids' version. That can be something that they could watch if they want to stay informed. But I think just monitoring as well, if they can stay informed, understand what's happening. But let's remember there's a much bigger picture going on here, and just protecting our own mental health in that case, and in our emotional well-being. I definitely say, do be mindful of that when you are watching the news and where the children are as well, because that can sometimes, children don't understand all of that if they just see all of these stats and the figures and so forth. So I think it might, definitely.
If anyone watching this has a question for Natalie, please post it now. Was there any other final words of advice that you have for parents right now that you wanted to share?
I think, I touched on it before, but it is, keep it simple. And I think actually, there's so much going on, but also let's look at, I was talking about this earlier on my IGTV live, about let's shift that focus again and maybe start to pick out, gratitude is a good kind of activity to do with your children, the beginning of the day and end of the day, even if your whole day is all muddled and messy in between. But we started off, with a positive intention, and we ended off with something, what was funny today, what made me smile today, what was something good that happened today. And just bear in mind that, yes, we're there to look after the children and we're there to educate them, but it's also important as parents that that phrase of we fill our cup as well, and just make sure that we're looking after our own energy tank and reserves as well. And above all else, let's just, take everything away, focus back to those activities that feel good, that feel nourishing, and that feels good for your family. And if it does mean some days are spent as a movie day on the sofa, and the children are happy. I'm not saying every day, because some structure and routine is important, but that's absolutely okay. Let's not give ourselves a hard time.
Such lovely advice. Thank you so much for sharing all of that. Where can people find out more about you and what you do and what you offer?
Yeah, sure. So you can find me on Instagram, obviously, in here, Power Thoughts NC, or at my website, powerthoughts.co.uk. I also do weekly breakfast boost sessions. So that's a Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 8:30, where it's just a 20-minute little. We have a little coaching chat. I've got some affirmation cards or mantras I share with children and families, and do a little activity that they can then use throughout the rest of the day, just to kind of start the day off on a positive note, and give them some tools to help manage the wobbles. So yeah, you can find me there.
Amazing. Thank you so much for talking to me.
Thanks so much, Chloe. Thank you so much, and so lovely to chat with you.
Take care. Thanks. Bye.
Bye. Bye.